Political stunts usually don't work. When you think of a political stunt, sometimes you think of Hillary Clinton using a black accent when she's talking to voters in the South, or maybe Hillary Clinton saying, "Pokemon, go to the polls!" Or maybe Hillary Clinton, doing anything. It seems that all of my political stunt references come from one Hillary Clinton. Political stunts, generally speaking, do not work. And what I mean by political stunt is trying to do something to garner media attention without the policy attached to it. However, every so often, a political stunt does work, and we saw that when the Texas governor and the Florida governor were sending illegal immigrants all over the place. I said that was the first political stunt I've seen work in a very long time, and one that happened yesterday. We'll talk about it. My name is Joe Bob. I have some thoughts, and they are as follows. So I don't know if everybody saw this, but yesterday, JD Vance happened to be at the same airport as Kamala Harris. And I've been trying to think in my head how planned this was, because it felt planned, because like I said earlier, it's a political stunt that actually worked. But in case you haven't seen this yet, this is a smart person who is running for the office of, the vice president, attacking rhetorically the lady who's in the vice president's office right now. I think a lot has been said about Kamala and her policies and all that stuff. Yes, true. But also, Kamala Harris is just a dumb individual. JD Vance, on the other hand, is a smart individual. I think he went to Yale. I should know that. Best-selling author, military veteran, Silicon Valley financier. A lot of things that JD Vance does, and does very well. He's a smart dude. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, is not a smart person, and I don't think in a million years would ever come up with this sort of political stunt. Having said that, she wouldn't have the opportunity because JD Vance talks to the media all the time. In case you haven't seen this, I want you to watch this. We'll all watch it together. This is JD Vance, who happened to be at the same airport as the vice president's plane, says, there's Kamala Harris's plane, and has the wherewithal to walk over and talk to her media brigade and say, hey, it's been 18 days since Kamala Harris has been the presumptive nominee of your party. How come you guys haven't asked her any questions or been able to ask her any questions? There is a small caveat here that the New York Post is reporting that I'd like to get to, but first, watch this. A successful political stunt. Check it out.
one, just get a good look at the plane. Hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months. But I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changes her mind because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real campaign instead of one from a basement with a teleprompter. So, have a good one, guys. See ya.
What would you like to hear from her?
I'd love her to answer these questions. I'd love her to just answer what she wants to do and also explain why every single position she has changed. She pretends to be a prosecutor, yet she pretends to be a tough-on-crime prosecutor, and yet here she is wanting to defund the police. She's the borders yard, yet she's opened up the American southern border. This is a person who has to answer the questions from the media, and it's disgraceful that she runs for you guys. It's also insulting to the American people. But anyway, we're going to go do our event. I appreciate you guys being here. I wish she paid you some more attention. See ya.
From the looks of it, I would guess that wasn't planned. I would guess that JD shows up to the airport, sees the vice president's airplane, and goes, "Oh, we should go do a thing." And then he walks over there and talks to the media. The reason I think that is because I think if this were planned out, he probably would have stuck around and gone, "So do you guys have any questions for me?" Even though he takes questions from the media constantly. That would have been I think, a good flex at the very end of it. Hey guys, Kamala Harris hasn't answered any questions. Would you like to ask some questions of me? I think this needs to be a much bigger issue, and I think conservatives need to make it a bigger issue. I know we are, but there's this tradition in some schools, baseball schools, where if there's a 4 straight ball walk, believe me, I'm getting to a point. I realize in my head that was a jarring transition. But if the pitcher throws 4 straight balls, the crowd starts chanting, "Ball 5, ball 5, ball 5." Then he throws another ball, ball 6. And until the pitcher throws a strike, they will keep upping the ante and keep chanting the amount of balls this pitcher has thrown in a row. I think we should be doing the same thing. I think every single person who does not want to see Kamala Harris become the president of the United States should tweet every single day, 18. Tomorrow will be 19. The next day will be 20. Every single person in conservative media should be laser focused on the fact that we need to get the message to the American people that Kamala Harris is not running based on any sort of policy at all. She's just running because people don't like Donald Trump, which is a crazy way of electing a president. But I think the biggest thing that JD hit on, which I think if this were planned, he'd probably have a more well-thought-out statement, but good for him for bringing it up, is that all of Kamala Harris's positions have changed. They've put out statements through her campaign website, which, by the way, doesn't have a policy section. Go look at the Kamala Harris website. As of yesterday, when I looked up, there's no section on policy. Maybe we could pull it up on the actual screen here. I didn't have that planned out, but maybe, I don't know, later on we'll plan it and pull up the Kamala Harris website. There's no policy section. They do have put out statements, though, that are completely 180 degrees away from what she has said in the past. And generally speaking, if you change your entire position, flip-flopping is as old as time in politics. But generally speaking, when you do change your mind on an issue, you have to come out, face the press, and explain why, in fact, you changed your mind on any particular issue. But Kamala Harris has yet to do any of that for 18 days. Good on JD for recognizing that and remembering it and being able to state it articulately. But the idea that she's been able to avoid the press and the press has let it happen is mind-boggling. But speaking of mind-boggling, the things she does say are getting a little bit crazier. Policy-wise, it is as far left as it can go. The problem I'm seeing, and the reason that I think Republicans can't lose, and what I mean by that is it's possible for them to lose, but it's going to be up to them to lose. I know that wasn't even as good of an explanation as it needs to be. Bottom line is that the race is the Republicans to lose, and they will win if they can communicate to the American people how crazy some of the policies that Kamala Harris is pushing. I'm going to play this clip that is making the rounds of Kamala at a rally, I believe in Wisconsin, talking for about a minute about some of the policy issues, which, again, are almost exactly the opposite of the truth. Watch this, and we will discuss. This is Kamala Harris at a rally in front of a bunch of cheering people. Check it out.
We believe in a future where we lower the cost of living for America's families so that they have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because while our economy is doing well by many measures, prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it. You know, when I was Attorney General, I went after price-fixing schemes. And when I am president, it will be a day-one priority to fight to bring down prices. I will take on big corporations that engage in illegal price gouging. I will take on corporate landlords that unfairly raise rents on working families. I will take on big pharma and cap the cost of prescription drugs for all Americans. And continue to bring manufacturing jobs back to America.
So I think the funniest part about that is some of that stuff sounds like a Trump speech. I will cap drug prices. Oh, okay, Trump did that, especially with insulin. Now, to do it for every single medication, which is a weird thing in and of itself, but to do it for every single medication would be Medicare for all, which is socialism. But anyways, regardless of whether or not it's a smart idea, it's something that Trump did, so great on that. Bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, also a pretty big Trump talking point. The stuff that I thought was really funny, though, is the "I will stop price gouging." Price gouging in the free market. Price gouging sounds like a pretty nasty word, I'll admit. And I think it's used intentionally for that purpose. It's supposed to sound evil and bad. Oh no, price gouging. Price gouging is a good thing. I think eventually that clip will get chopped up and used somewhere against me. Advocates for price gouging. But yes, price gouging, in other words, increasing the price if the demand is greater than the supply, is a good thing. Because what does that do in a free market society? If the price goes up because the demand is high and the supply is low, well, that incentivizes more suppliers to flood the market with more options for consumers. In other words, consumers benefit. And then when there's more supply to meet the demand, the prices come down. That's the way that economics works. A lot of people get really, really upset when companies jack up prices during a natural disaster, say for a hurricane. If a store in, let's just say, the Florida area jacks up the price for plywood to board up your windows when a hurricane is coming in, and I realize it's probably not the greatest time to be saying this, but it's just true. When the home improvement store, the hardware store, jacks up the prices for plywood to board up your windows, well, that sucks, admittedly. However, here's also what it does. It incentivizes more retailers, suppliers, to stock more hardware stores with the stuff that people need because there's a financial incentive. If you make, quote-unquote, price gouging illegal, in other words, if you make it illegal for stores to upcharge because they have the supply and the demand has grown drastically, well, then what's the incentive for other businesses to come and help? At the end of the day, all you're going to do is give a couple people smaller prices for things that a bunch of people need, rather than, okay, well, there's financial incentive, so a business runs down to Florida, sends a bunch of 18-wheelers with plywood down to Florida because the executives of the company go, oh my gosh, there's this huge financial incentive to have these pieces of plywood in this area, because look at how much Home Depot is selling it for. Then Ace Hardware wants to do it. Then Lowe's wants to do it. There is a competition model that incentivizes more supply coming in to meet the demand, which again then creates the price going down. Now, I'm not for any of those hardware stores working together to keep the prices high. I believe in competition as much as you can have it. But at the end of the day, price gouging is not a bad thing. The idea, too, if we were to get to another thing that she said that actually affects me, is this whole idea of landlords. We're going to stop landlords from raising rent on people. I realize this is a tough argument to make, especially if you're in the position where you are a landlord. But I think something that could resonate with everybody is what I have to do every April/November, December. I forget specifically when. And that is when I have to pay property taxes on the properties that my wife and I own/manage. This April specifically, I let my wife in on doing the numbers for some of the properties and paying off the property taxes, which, if you don't know this, have gone up substantially. As a landlord, I'm telling you, me personally, don't want to raise prices. Don't want to raise rent. I haven't raised rent on literally any of our tenants, except for one, but that's a different case. I haven't raised rents on anybody's. I haven't raised rents at all in the last 2 or 3 years, which is crazy, I know. But in every unit, we've got great tenants for the most part, except for that one guy. Every unit, there's great tenants. Because there's great tenants, there's very little headache on my end. And because there's little headache on my end, I don't have to do as much. And therefore, yeah, there's a financial incentive to raise rents, but then all of a sudden rent goes up and all of these tenants are now complaining about different things that I now need to deal with, so it sucks up my time. So I've made the financial decision that in some cases it makes sense to raise rent, in some cases it doesn't. In the most cases, in my particular situation, I have tenants that I don't want to raise rent on because they're great tenants. They pay on time, they stay out of my hair, everything in their unit works. Great. But then April comes around, and I have to do property taxes, which effectively is me paying rent to the government. Landlords paying rent to the government. If Kamala Harris and Democrats are going to get out there and say, we need to stop landlords from raising rent on working families, okay, then stop raising rent on landlords. And I realize sometimes this is a difficult thing to be able to relate with, but I'm telling you, as a person that has good tenants that I don't want to raise rent on because they're good people and they stay out of my hair. That's just genuinely how I feel. I don't want to send them a notice saying, hey, your rent is going up. But if the government keeps raising rent on me like it has been doing in the form of taxes, what choice do I have other than to get priced out of the market and effectively make all of the investment and time put in completely worthless? I fully realize this discussion I'm seeing in the comments. Wow. I know it sounds bad, but I'm telling you from a perspective of will this actually work? No, it won't. Because you can't expect somebody to take it in the shorts who really is just responding to the government giving it to them. Again, convoluted. I haven't done this in a long time, so some of the thoughts are a little bit sporadic, but I think what I'm ultimately trying to say is the government can't force things down when they're also forcing things up, because eventually you get people like me squeezed in the middle. I don't even remember the rest of what Kamala Harris was saying other than the Trump talking points, which was great, I guess. I don't know. How are we supposed to feel? I would love to hear your comments in the comment section. How are we supposed to feel about a person who I do not want to see become president shift their policy positions more towards my side. Right? Weird, right? I do not want Kamala Harris at all. Also, because she is a far left radical and the most liberal senator in the Senate when she was in the Senate, because of all those things, she has now shifted her policy positions to be more moderate, which is in my direction. How do I feel about that? I guess good, I think. I think ultimately that's good. I still don't want her to win because I think she's lying about those things. But I don't know. How do we feel about people coming around? I don't know. But speaking of the president and the presidency, I don't know if you know this. Kamala Harris actually isn't the president, legally speaking. Joe Biden, I don't know if you guys remember this guy. He's an old dude, can't really think. It's actually super sad, other than the fact that he's a terrible person. But apparently, he's actually still the president of the United States. And the president of the United States, Joe Biden, gave an interview in which he kind of showed the hand of how Democrats, such as himself, are just willing to freaking lie about things. I have been on this point so long of people have different opinions, people get things wrong. Fine, we all understand that. The people that are just willing to outright freaking lie annoy me to no end. Watch this. This is Joe Biden finally giving an interview that is inconsequential and completely irrelevant, but it shows how Democrats are just willing to flat out lie about things that have been proven untrue and honestly just stuff they made up. Watch this.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It's have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now.
The bloodbath comment has been disproven by every single media outlet, and yet the President of the United States continues to repeat it. What do you have to do to, one, get these people to stop lying, two, get the American people to not tolerate them lying about stuff? I know we've belabored it over and over and over again, but the bloodbath comment was talking specifically about an economic situation having to do with cars coming in from China and tariffs and what the Biden administration wants to do with electric vehicles. And Trump said, economically, this is going to be a bloodbath. He used the word bloodbath, which I guess, I don't know, it's a commonly used word. Everybody knows this. And then they took it as, if I'm not elected, it will be a bloodbath in the streets because of all the political violence, which is not at all what he said. And everybody knows that's not what he said. And yet, the President of the United States, again, this guy named Joe Biden, I know, nobody knows who he is, nobody knows where he is, he's just out of plain sight, repeats the same lie that he has to have been told over and over again. That's my question. Is anybody telling him, like, hey, everybody knows that's not true? Like when he was telling the story about riding the Amtrak with a guy who had died several years before this story was said to have taken place, he kept telling it over and over and over again. Does anybody say, hey, that's not true? Or, actually, or is everybody around him also just liars? This is the problem that I think we are ultimately coming to from a culture that has lost its religious moral compass. And I know people are, religion and politics need to be separated. Yeah, legally speaking, I guess so. But you can't separate religion from society, and you can't separate society from politics. So they're going to be intertwined. And if a society loses its religious moral compass, you're going to have a society that no longer has a moral compass. And if the society doesn't have a moral compass, and those people trickle into politics, as they always do, because those are the types of people that work in politics are the type of power-hungry, climb-the-ladder individuals. If they don't have the moral compass from religion into society, into politics, they are just willing to lie. Maybe somebody has said, hey, Mr. President, that isn't actually true. Everybody knows it's not true, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, all the big lefty outlets. Everybody knows that statement isn't true. Or maybe they just look at that statement as a winning thing that if some people believe it, then it's good for our side. And whether or not it's true is completely irrelevant. That, unfortunately, is, I think, the world that we're moving heavily towards. Speaking of people lying about things, I want to read you this Twitter thread really quick regarding the vice presidential pick of Kamala Harris. This guy, I don't really know who he is. Apparently he was formerly in Congress. I think he was a Democrat. Let me check. Peter Meyer, I think, had this Twitter thread that Jonah Goldberg retweeted that I thought was fascinating. And he starts off like this. I'm just going to read it to you verbatim, and then I don't know enough about Tim Walz's now alleged stolen valor situation to comment effectively. I just know what guys like this are saying. Here's this Twitter thread. This is going to piss people off. With this take, but what the hell? I think Walz played fast and loose with his military bio to stay above water as his congressional district drifted right. He let audiences paint in their minds a deceptive picture. It was shady, but not stolen valor. His words. Walz, alluding to the weapons of war that I carried in war to give credibility to his pro-gun stance, intentionally sought to paint this deceptive picture, just like saying deployed during OEF. But he did not claim unearned medals or lie about being in Iraq/Afghanistan. Some earlier reporting bought the deceptive picture I mentioned above, but that's not Walz's words. I've had reporters say/write that I was a Marine or an Afghan vet. Trickier than combat vet, which I didn't claim, but others have described. His burden to correct. He goes on, I've tried to correct reporting on me. I definitely wasn't a Marine. And though I spent 18 months in Afghanistan versus 9 months in Iraq, fact is, I was a civilian in Afghanistan, not in uniform, though in much more danger. A veteran of a conflict in that sense, but not in the sense of an Afghan vet. This is the guy talking about himself. Whether the mobilization/retirement timing was coincidental or a dick move, his words, is something I think only the enlisted soldiers in his unit can say. I know one or two have spoken publicly that it was a dick move, but I'd have to hear from the plurality of their accounts on whether or not this is a personal beef. Unrelated to Walz, the combat vet identifier has always made me wince. I wouldn't correct if someone called me one, but I'm not comfortable describing myself as a combat vet. I served in a combat zone, regularly left the wire that was... Oh, now this is getting long and confusing. The bottom line, this is the last tweet, by the way. The bottom line here is he's making a case for Walz, I think. Maybe he's a Republican. He's making a case for Walz to, I think, an actually pretty good point. Maybe this is going to piss people off here, too. That you can't handle the way people report on you, which is absolutely true. But he does go on in this tweet, as I read, that you should go out in front of cameras and correct the mistakes. Which at this point, at 10 a.m. Pacific time on a Thursday morning, Governor Walz has not done. And I think that's where the problem lies with a lot of people. Yes, the media, you don't get to say how the media reports things. If somebody calls you a combat veteran and you weren't, to Walz's credit, I guess, sometimes that happens. But given the position that he's in now, he should come out and say exactly what he meant when he was talking about carrying a firearm in a combat zone, or whatever the quote was specifically. And he should let people know what actually happened. Again, like I said at the very beginning, I don't know enough about the entirety of the accusation of Tim Walz being a stolen valor candidate. But what I do know is that if there is misreporting, and I don't know, maybe he thinks there is misreporting, it is his duty and obligation to come out and correct it. And if he doesn't, that's where the problem lies. And I would imagine that then you can actually fairly be cast as a stolen valor individual. Do I think he actually will come out and correct it? Probably not. Kind of like why we said, in the same realm of what we were talking about with Joe Biden, because Democrats lie. They lie a lot because the fabric of society has drifted away from religious morality. But that'll do it for today. We appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. I think we'll see you tomorrow. We were taking yesterday off. It was my daughter's birthday. She's 1 year old. We went to the aquarium, which was really cool. Aquariums are expensive. We ended up buying a season pass because if we went one other time, it would make sense to have season passes as opposed to just buying a day at the aquarium. But appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. The chat thing is now giving me the circle of death, so I can't say hello. But I'm assuming all of the friends who generally are on this thing on their general platforms, whether it's Getter, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, X. Sorry. I wonder if we can stream to Threads. For some reason, I've amassed a following on Threads. I don't know how I feel about it. But all of you who are watching, appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Should be around the same time. Working on some other content, too. And really excited, too, because this studio now is configured to have another person here. And so I think Tuesday is the first time we'll have a live guest in studio. Another comedian buddy of mine. It should be fun. Let me know if you have any requests. Anybody who lives in the Southern California area who might be a good guest, let me know. Be a good time. All right, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.